The evenings in our neighborhood often resonated with a gentle familiarity. The sprinklers engage in a rhythmic symphony, their clicks punctuating the evening air, while a distant dog barks, finding solace as night falls. From an open window, the soft murmur of a television weaves through the atmosphere, blending with the sounds of dusk. Mine was part of it as well. At 47, having navigated life alone since Thomas's passing 5 years prior, the rhythm of routine had transformed into both solace and confinement. I toiled away at my position in the county records office, steady, serene, and reliable, much like the evenings that followed. Returned home, prepared a solitary dinner, perhaps delved into a book or became engrossed in a classic film flickering on the screen. Wash, repeat. My neighbor, Walter Alden, was woven into that familiar cadence. Robert Kincaid resided next door for what must have been 15 years, yet our interactions were limited to mere pleasantries exchanged over the shared hedge or a casual wave as one of us departed from the driveway. He was perhaps a decade or so my senior, having retired from a career that seemed to revolve around engineering, or so I recall someone mentioning once. His lawn was a picture of perfection, and his house stood as a testament to meticulous care. A solitary figure, his face Thomas by the passage of time, typically adorned with a baseball cap, most often a plain navy blue, occasionally bearing the words Vietnam Veteran. His presence was unwavering, as steadfast as the ancient oak tree that graced his front lawn. We were not truly friends, not in the genuine sense. Merely community members, vessels gliding gracefully through the tranquil suburban night. That evening unfolded much like any other late August night. The air enveloped me, heavy with warmth, clinging to the remnants of the day, infused with the earthy aroma of dry grass, and the delicate sweetness of night sky petunias blooming in pots on my quaint back patio. The crickets were preparing their evening concert, each note a prelude to the night's melody. After completing my solitary dinner, I resolved to address the task of deadheading the rose bushes that adorned the fence separating our properties. The snip of the shears was a balm for the soul, the thorny stems a tactile reminder of nature's resilience, and the velvety softness of a spent bloom cradled in my hand evoked a sense of tranquility. The setting sun adorned the sky with hues of bruised purples and fiery oranges, a breathtaking spectacle for a solitary observer. Engrossed in my musings, I found myself softly murmuring to a particularly obstinate group of withered blossoms, a quirk I had developed, conversing with my plants as if they were cherished companions, when a gentle cough broke the tranquility behind me. I sat up, taken aback, gripping my shears tightly. Walter Alden stood on his side of the low, chain-link fence, his hands resting on the top rail. Typically, he didn't find himself wandering the streets at this hour. The glow of the porch light stretched out shadows, rendering his expression difficult to decipher at first glance. "Good evening, Sarah," he re-Thomased, his voice low and slightly gravelly as it always was. "Oh, Walter Alden." "Evening," I replied, attempting to maintain a casual demeanor, though my heart raced slightly from the unexpected encounter, as I busied myself with the roses. I waved the shears in a loose, uncertain manner. "They appear quite splendid this year," he re-Thomased, his eyes gliding over the foliage. "You take good care of them." I attempted a faint smile, striving to do just that. "They possess a certain flair, albeit a touch theatrical, yet the endeavor is undeniably rewarding." Typically, that would conclude the discussion. A slight nod, perhaps a re-Thomas on the approaching weather, and we would part ways into our distinct realms. Yet Walter Alden remained still. He simply stood there, gazing not entirely at the roses but beyond them. He moved past them, towards me. An unusual stillness enveloped him. The familiar space between us crackled with an unexpected energy, a subtle vibration that lingered in the air. Strain. Indecision. I adjusted my stance, a wave of self-awareness washing over me in my worn gardening attire, likely with traces of soil adorning my cheek. "Everything all right, Walter Alden?" He inhaled deeply, his gaze finally locking onto mine. His eyes, a clear pale blue, held a certain depth tonight. "Troubled?" "No, not troubled. More akin to a quest." "Sarah?" He started to speak, then fell silent. He cleared his throat once more. "There's an observation I've made. One that has lingered in my mind for quite some time, to be honest." My thoughts surged like a tempest. Had I allowed the grass to grow wild along the fence line? Was my recycling bin once more teetering on the brink of overflow? We had navigated these years without a single grievance, not one. Oh, I prompted, maintaining a lightness in my voice, even as a knot of apprehension twisted in my stomach. He inclined his body ever so slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper, despite the absence of any other soul nearby. The closeness of the gesture was peculiar, unforeseen. It's the manner in which you converse with them. I blinked. I apologize. The roses, he clarified, gesturing toward the bush I had been nurturing, and the other plants occasionally. When you're out here, particularly in the evenings when you believe no one is watching. A warmth rose to my cheeks. Oh Lord! He had listened to my absurd, one-sided dialogues with the petunias and the obstinate rose bushes. What a mortifying situation. I likely came across as utterly unhinged. I parted my lips, ready to fumble through an explanation, perhaps even a self-deprecating quip. Yet he raised a hand, a mere gesture, halting my advance. His expression bore no trace of mockery or amusement. It was grave, profoundly grave, and within his gaze, a glimmer of vulnerability emerged that quelled my shame. Don't, he murmured gently. Don't feel ashamed. That's not why I'm saying this. He paused, collecting his thoughts, as the crickets appeared to chirp more insistently in the unexpected stillness. The porch light illuminated the glint of silver in his hair. He fixed his gaze on me, unwavering and intense, and uttered words that stayed with me, words that changed the rhythm of the evening forever, that I could never have envisioned. It's simply that I believe I grasp the reasons behind your actions, and I need to share something I've never revealed to another living being. I stood frozen, the sheer strangling slipping from my grasp, the sharp scent of crushed rose leaves mingling with the cooling air. Stunned, Walter Alden Kincaid, the reserved neighbor with the immaculate lawn, grasped the reason behind my conversations with my plants. He harbored a secret. The crickets grew deafening, each chirp piercing the heavy silence that lay between us. I don't understand, Walter Alden, I finally managed to say, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. The knot in my stomach tightened, yet it had transformed beyond mere apprehension. A relentless curiosity cut through the silence. He adjusted his stance, his eyes falling to the hands that lay upon the fence rail. His knuckles stood out, the skin roughened, bearing the though-mass of countless days spent toiling under the sun. It's difficult to articulate, he whispered, glancing upward. The porch light illuminated the creases that framed his pale blue eyes, lines of experience perhaps tinged with sadness. Seeing you out here brought back memories of Eleanor. Eleanor, his spouse. She departed this world perhaps 7 or 8 years prior before Thomas. I had not been well acquainted with her, merely exchanging a casual wave and engaging in fleeting conversations about the weather. In her final days, she had grown increasingly delicate. Walter Alden had devoted himself to her care with unwavering dedication. Every soul in the neighborhood was aware of that fact. She was seldom a topic of his conversation. She used to converse with the birds, he continued, a subtle, nearly imperceptible smile gracing his lips. Not merely scattering breadcrumbs, she engaged in lively dialogues, sharing the details of her day. She inquired if they had encountered anything intriguing during their journeys, especially the cardinals. She cherished the cardinals. He paused, his gaze wandering towards the darkening sky, as if he might catch sight of one even now. I would playfully poke fun at her for it in a light-hearted way, you see. She referred to them as her feathered confidants. Yet, as time passed and her outings became scarce, those birds and the exchanges they fostered became essential to her existence. I believe she preserved a fragment of herself, a fragment that sought to unite, even as the universe condensed to the mere perspective framed by the window. My breath caught in my throat, my mind wandered to those tranquil evenings, where the soft hum of the television could not quite bridge the void left by Thomas. In those moments, nurturing my garden became the sole dialogue that truly resonated. It was never about anticipating a response from the roses. It was a matter of expressing thoughts, releasing emotions into the universe, even if the only witnesses were the whispering leaves and the fading light of the sun. Once she had departed, Walter Alden continued, his voice descending into a husky whisper, laden with emotion, filling the stillness of the house. It was vast, exhilarating. At times, I would find myself gazing out the window where she once sat, observing the bird feeder, and I would indeed begin conversing with them as well. He gazed at me then, a stark sincerity in his eyes that ensnared my attention. Not in the way Eleanor did, incomplete dialogues, simply recognizing their presence. Morning red I could whisper to a cardinal, or a bustling day, to the sparrow bickering over seed. Perhaps foolish, one might say. Yet it resonated, essential. Feels akin to resisting the void. He tilted his head ever so slightly, a gesture tinged with self-awareness. When I listen to you, Sarah, conversing with your roses, I don't perceive madness. I listen, yet I remain uncertain. A figure navigating the stillness, a solitary bloom clings to life, a testament to the enduring nature of connection. The atmosphere trembled with the weight of his revelation. The straightforward yet deep acknowledgement lingered in the air, creating a connection more personal than any coffee shared or barbecue enjoyed in the neighborhood. The flush of embarrassment had entirely dissipated, giving way to an unforeseen surge of empathy. Before me stood this man, a neighbor whose presence had been little more than a whisper in my life, now unearthing a fragment of his sorrow, his solitude, reflecting my own unvoiced emotions in a manner I had never expected. Walter Alden, I murmured gently, reclaiming my voice once more. I appreciate you sharing that with me. It is far from foolish. It seems to me that I grasp your point. He offered a subtle, nearly undetectable nod, a sense of relief easing the creases around his eyes. We lingered for a moment longer, a delicate connection forged over the years, spanning the fence that had kept us at a respectful distance. The vibrant hues of orange and purple had surrendered to the night, giving way to a rich, velvety indigo, punctuated by the emergence of the first twinkling stars. The light from his porch appeared to radiate a cozier warmth at that moment. However, that's not the primary point I wish to convey, he stated, his voice recovering some of its previous fervor. He inhaled once more, reminiscent of a diver readying himself to descend into the depths of the ocean. What I must express is a thought Eleanor shared with me long ago, a secret she entrusted to me. Yet in your presence it seems vital, essential, akin to conversing with the birds. He paused, studying my expression, maybe assessing my response, maybe fortifying his resolve. The crickets continued their serenade, blissfully unaware. The atmosphere was electric once more, a sense of anticipation humming just below the tranquil facade of the suburban evening. Whatever words were on the verge of escaping his lips, I sensed deep within that they would alter far more than the tranquil cadence of my nights. It resembled the gradual movement of tectonic plates, a slow, profound, and unchangeable force. She recounted how he began, then hesitated, his eyes meeting mine, conveying a retomosable blend of fragility and determination. She recounted a night quiet, long before our paths crossed, a night yet unforgettable, that helped her rediscover her place in the world. Listening to you, I came to the realization that perhaps you are the only one who could truly comprehend. Do you comprehend? Is it me? What could Eleanor Kinkett, a woman I scarcely knew, have endured that Walter Alden believed I, Whitmore, the reserved widow next door, would somehow grasp in a way others could not? My thoughts were a void, incapable of summoning any potential ideas. The night enveloped everything in a profound stillness, the distant chirping of crickets merging into a soft, almost imperceptible hum as I directed my full attention to Walter Alden, poised in anticipation. The fragrance of my roses appeared more potent, more substantial. Walter Alden inched nearer to the fence, his voice softening to a near whisper, laced with a sense of secrecy and burdened by the echoes of the past. Eleanor. She was not always the serene figure, quietly knitting by the window, that the locals recall. In her youth, long before our paths intertwined, she faced a challenging period. Her initial betrothed. He never returned from Korea. It broke her into pieces. I inclined my head with deliberation. Such a profound loss. Indeed, that is clear to me. The vast emptiness lingered, as the world faded into a muted gray, enveloped in silence. She seemed to float away. Walter Alden pressed on, his eyes unfocused, lost in memories of days gone by. She left her family behind for a time, accepting a position in a quaint coastal town far to the north. I was completely alone, unfamiliar with anyone around me. She retomised that it was the most solitary period she had ever experienced. More isolating than the sorrow in a sense, for the sorrow at least carried a sense of engagement. It was nothing but a void. He halted, his thumb gliding thoughtfully over the top wire of the fence. She toiled as a server in this quaint diner. Endless days just managing to get by. The nights were unbearable. She resided in a small rented room perched above a bustling shop. The only sound that lingered was the whisper of the wind, accompanied by the faint call of a distant foghorn. He cast a glance over his shoulder, his pale eyes probing into mine once more. On a fateful night, a fierce storm unleashed its wrath. The wind howled fiercely, rain lashed relentlessly, and darkness enveloped most of the town as the power succumbed to the storm. Fear gripped her as she curled up in her small room, a profound sense of isolation enveloping her, leaving her feeling entirely abandoned. She expressed a sensation of impending dissolution into the shadows. The image was striking, haunting. The chill, the dread, the suffocating burden of solitude she likely experienced was almost palpable to me. Then Walter Alden said, his voice gentle, there came a knock at her door. My heart leaped with a sudden thrill. Amidst a tempest? Power is out. She hesitated on the brink of silence, yet the insistence lingered in the air. Calmly persistent, not hurried, at long last she eased the door open. The bookshop downstairs was run by the old man, Mr. Ellison, a solitary figure for the most part. He hardly exchanged a word with anyone, perpetually lost in the pages of his books. Walter Alden adjusted his stance, resting his forearms against the fence. In the shadowy corridor he stood, a candle stub clutched in one hand and a saucer in the other, wax likely trickling onto his skin. He gazed at her and re-Thomased, his voice cutting through the howling wind. The storm's quite fierce, isn't it? It is truly disheartening to find oneself solitary in such inclement weather. Tea has been brewed. Would you like to enjoy a cup? Purchase candlelight. Walter Alden exhaled slowly. Eleanor re-Thomased that she simply gazed at him, this man a mere acquaintance, this reserved and solitary presence. In that instant, as the candlelight danced across his features and his soothing voice filled the air, she was enveloped by an intense feeling, not quite of rescue but rather of an undeniable bond. A beacon cast into the shadows, he cast his gaze downward, a subtle quiver betraying his grip. She descended to his shop. Shadows danced around the room, books piled high in every corner, the aroma of aged paper and dust mingling in the air, alongside the warmth of the hot tea he had prepared on a small camping stove. Conversation was sparse between them, almost non-existent. By the flickering glow of candlelight, he recited poetry with a voice that danced through the shadows. She believed it was Tennyson. His voice carried an unexpected depth and richness. She sat quietly, tea in hand, observing the shadows as they waltzed across the walls. The tempest howled beyond the walls, yet within that small haven of flickering candlelight and whispered conversations, she confessed to feeling secure, acknowledged, and no longer wholly solitary. He lapsed into silence. The crickets returned to their relentless cadence. The streetlight at the corner threw elongated, ghostly shadows that danced across the pavement, shaped by the gnarled branches of the trees. I became aware that I was unconsciously holding my breath. The narrative unfolded in a manner that was far from the jarring experience I had anticipated. Neither scandal nor grand drama unfolded, yet it was deeply personal. An unanticipated bond between individuals, emerging in a time of profound openness. Two solitary spirits discovering fleeting comfort amidst the tempest. That night lingered in her memory. Walter Alden re-Thomased softly. She expressed that it didn't miraculously erase her sorrow or her solitude, yet it stirred something within her, illuminating the truth that connection could emerge in the most unforeseen manners from the most surprising individuals, as long as one remained willing to slightly ajar the door, even in the face of fear. He gazed directly at me, his demeanor sincere. It was perhaps 2 decades into our union when she finally shared that tale with me. She mentioned that she held it close, as it felt deeply personal and quietly defining, and she asked me to promise not to share it casually. Yet Walter Alden hesitated, sifting through his thoughts for the perfect expression. It's delightful to hear you converse with your flowers, Sarah. It brought to mind her conversations with the birds, and it evoked memories of Mr. Abernethy serving tea in the shadows, seeking bonds wherever possible, breaking through the stillness. He let out a heavy sigh, a sound that echoed with the weight of countless unvoiced reflections. I suppose I merely wished for you to be aware of that. I perceive your presence. Perhaps it is perfectly acceptable to seek comfort in gentle exchanges, be it with roses, birds, or even a neighbor leaning over the fence on a balmy evening. The revelation lingered in the atmosphere, straightforward, deep, and completely unforeseen. He had woven Eleanor's narrative into something more profound. He had offered a glimpse into his comprehension, his compassion. He perceived my subtle way of managing things not as oddity, but as a shared endeavor in the pursuit of connection. In recounting Eleanor's tale, he, much like Mr. Abernethy, extended a subtle sense of companionship amidst the solitude we each, in our unique manners, traversed. The narrow expanse separating our homes, typically a mere stretch of grass and a chain-linked barrier, transformed into sacred territory, sanctified by our mutual fragility and the lingering spirit of a kindness exchanged long ago amidst a tempest. The gravity of Walter Alden's words regarding Eleanor's tale enveloped me. It wasn't burdensome, akin to sorrow, but rather stabilizing, reminiscent of a cozy blanket on a brisk night. He had woven a narrative for me. He had bestowed upon me a unique insight into the depths of his heart, revealing the serene terrain of his marriage and the shadows of his loss. He had observed my solitary, somewhat quirky tendency, and rather than casting judgment, he extended a hand of understanding, grounded in his own experiences. It was a gesture of retomisable compassion, surprising and profoundly touching. Walter Alden, I began, my voice heavy with an unexpected surge of emotion. I cleared my throat, hoping he would grasp the significance of his revelation. That ranks among the most generous gestures I have ever received, distributing that information, entrusting me with Eleanor's memory, along with your own emotions. I cast my eyes over the fence, locking onto his gaze in the gentle illumination of his porch light. Thank you very much. Truly, it holds a significance beyond my words. A subtle smile graced his lips once more, this time illuminating his eyes and crinkling the corners delightfully. Eleanor often read Thomas that connection has a way of revealing itself, as fluid as water. At times, all it requires is the gentle unblocking of a pathway. He waved his hand aimlessly in the space that separated us, in the expanse between our 2 yards, our 2 isolated existences. It seemed she was indeed correct. We lingered in a serene quietude for a moment, a stillness that was worlds apart from the courteous, somewhat uneasy pauses that had Thomased our 15 years as neighbors. The crickets sang their evening song, while the leaves of the maple tree danced in a sudden gust, and the distant murmur of the city seemed to fade into the background. There we stood, 2 souls by the fence line, beneath the expansive tapestry of stars, having transcended years of triviality in one sincere exchange. With a sudden clarity, I recalled the shears nestled in my grip and gently set them down in the vacant terracotta pot at my side. The gesture resembled the release of a heavy load, a relinquishing of the tight self-imposed barriers I had encased myself in since Thomas's passing. Walter Alden rose from the fence, his body arching in a gentle stretch. Well, he said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming lighter yet still warm, it's getting late. I should probably let you get back to it. Ah, it seems I have disrupted your serene moment of tending to the garden. It's all right, I replied hastily. This was, without a doubt, far more enjoyable than the tedious task of deadheading roses, trust me. He let out a soft chuckle, a warm rumbling sound that was reassuring to hear. He paused, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face for the briefest moment, then forged ahead, reminiscent of how he must have begun the conversation. Sarah, yes, I typically brew a pot of coffee around 9 in the morning, peruse the paper on my back deck, should the weather be pleasant. Nothing extravagant. His gaze met mine, a question lingering in his eyes, accompanied by an unmistakable invitation. Should you find yourself with a moment to spare and a desire for companionship, I would be delighted to have you join me. At times, there it stood, the unforeseen twist. It isn't a grand proclamation, nor is it a momentous occasion in the theatrical sense. Rather, it is something modest, straightforward, and profoundly transformative within the tapestry of our intertwined existences. A cup of coffee. Organization. A door stood ajar, invitingly, without coercion, reminiscent of the way Mr. Ellison presented his tea to Eleanor amidst the tempest. It was Walter Alden reaching out into the stillness, recognizing the mutual longing for connection he had so artfully articulated. My heart performed a delicate somersault, a gentle warmth unfurling within my chest, entirely unrelated to the residual heat of August. For 5 years I had resided here in solitude, largely withdrawn, allowing the silence to deepen around me. And now here it is, an invitation ignited by conversing roses and the beauty of shared vulnerability. Walter Alden, I re-Thomased, a true smile blossoming on my face, as effortless and inviting as the evening primrose unfurling in the vicinity. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. A wave of relief swept across his features, unmistakable even in the shadows. Good, he replied, his tone unembellished. Take your time, no rush at all. I will remember that, I responded with sincerity. He offered a final nod, a gesture that now resonated with a sense of camaraderie rather than mere dismissal. Very well then, good night, Sarah. Good night, Walter Alden, I whispered gently. He pivoted and made his way back to his home, his strides firm upon the flagstone path. The screen door let out a gentle creak as he stepped inside, and moments later, a warm glow began to emanate from his kitchen window. I lingered in that moment long after he had departed, gazing at the roses, the fence, and the stillness of the neighboring house, which now seemed less an isolated domain and more an integral part of the shared scenery. The atmosphere of the night was distinctly altered, more buoyant, in a way infused with potential. The words my neighbor uttered that night left me utterly astonished. The narrative extends beyond Eleanor and Mr. Ellison. It encompasses the subtle bravery he exhibited in revealing it, the compassion he demonstrated, and the genuine human bond he provided. It transcended mere comprehension of my conversations with my plants. It was about him perceiving me, the individual concealed beneath the monotony, behind the serene exterior. In that act, he had managed to diminish my sense of invisibility, to ease the weight of solitude that had settled upon me. You might find it hard to believe what transpired, as it lacked any noise or spectacle. It unfolded in hushed tones, a moment steeped in intimacy, shared across a garden fence on a seemingly mundane Tuesday evening. Yet, it altered something essential. It pried open a door I hadn't even known was sealed so firmly. As I finally turned to go inside, leaving the slumbering roses beneath the stars, I sensed that my once predictable evenings might soon take on a new hue. Perhaps by tomorrow at around 9 they might. It was as if a subtle miracle had unfolded in silence.